Hey guys, it's been a minute since I made a video, but today I wanted to make a video about a fun little project that I wrote recently that came about through streaming. So if you've been following along, I've been trying to stream almost every day for the last couple months. And something that's come up in chat is that when I stream and I try to code in stream, I usually am not very productive because I run my mouth way too much. And chat thought it would be funny if we had some sort of way to monitor the number of lines that I had changed while streaming, right? And so basically what we came up with was this is that we're just going to have some text on screen that essentially reports the total lines changed as well as how many of those lines have been added or removed and comparing commits versus uncommitted lines. So that's the general idea of what we want to build. And so what I wanted to show today is how I went about implementing that. Originally, I implemented it in PowerShell, but I know PowerShell is not very interesting and not really the most used scripting language these days. So I thought, let's do something a little bit more friendly and let's do TypeScript. Let's implement it in TypeScript. And I'm hoping that one, you'll think this is just fun and maybe useful to you if you make content or if you have some reason to monitor lines changed while you're doing something. You might find this useful, but I hope that it's maybe just inspiring and motivating to see that like one of the best parts of learning how to code or learning how to program is you can solve your own problems, that you can have an itch and you can scratch it and you don't need somebody else's help or somebody else's permission or input. You can just do it. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to build a line counter. So the first thing I'm going to do to build my line counter is I'm going to leverage some existing functionality that's out there in the world, specifically within Git, right? So Git is obviously used for version control, but it also has this functionality where you can do diffs, right, and show changes between either the head commit that you're on or between two specific commits. And there's a flag that you can pass to Git diff called short stat. And this flag will just print out one single line that'll show you lines added, lines removed, and files changed. Now, in this case, I don't have any of that information because I haven't actually made any changes. But let's go ahead and head over here and let's say console.log hello YouTube, like that. And then let's go back over here and run that same command. And now we can see we have one line that we've inserted and one file changed. And if I had removed a line, we'd see one deletion, I think is what it says. So what I basically want to do is I want my script to run this command between basically when I'm looking at committed changes, I want to look at changes between where I started and where I'm currently at. And then for uncommitted changes, I want to just look at where I'm currently at. So we're going to run this commit twice in my script, or this command twice in my script, and we're just going to parse its output. And then we're going to use that parsed output to actually display this line counter that you see on screen. So let's go ahead and walk through that really quick. It's actually not going to be super quick. You're going to have to watch me painfully implement it. So we're going to say if process.argv.length is less than or equal to 2, then we know that they haven't provided us with a repo to monitor. So we're going to say, please provide a Git repo path. Or let's say, please provide a path to a Git repository, just like that. And then if that's not the case, we will process.exit 1. And just so that Copilot isn't distracting me, I'm just going to disable it here real quick. Otherwise, Copilot's going to get on my nerves because it's trying to do all the work for me. All right, so we know now if they don't pass us a path to a Git repository, we're going to error. So let's go ahead and try that really quick. We'll say node dist index.js, and we should see please provide a path to a Git repository. If we do provide an additional argument and we say dist index.js, we should see it proceeds without error. That's what we want. So basically, we just want to enforce that the user actually tells us what Git repo you want us to go and monitor for changes. The next thing we need to do is we actually need to go to that repository, right? We actually need to cd, if it were, into that repository. In this case, we need to do it from node. And so in order to run commands, in order to change directories, we're going to use a method on the process object. So we're going to say process dot change dir, and we're going to pass in argv, and specifically we care about argv2. That's the argv we want, and it's going to complain because this could potentially be undefined. So we're going to say if we'll say const get repo equals argv2, and then we'll say if get repo equals undefined. Then we've run into some unexpected circumstance, so we'll say console.log please provide, or let's say unable to get repository path, and then again we will process.exit 1. Now there's a lot of additional validation that we could do here. We need to make this process.argv. There's a lot of additional validation that we could do here. Like we could make sure that Git is installed on the path. We could make sure that the repo that we've been given, or the path, is actually to a folder, and that folder actually has a Git repository initialized in it. We could do all that kind of validation, but for the sake of the video and time and all those good things, I'm going to keep this implementation relatively simplistic, and then obviously if you want to make it more grown up and more production ready, you most definitely can. All right, so we have process.changedir, and then after now that we're in the right repository, this is where we're going to want to actually figure out what commit are we beginning at, and then we're going to want to start processing the git diff commands to extract the line changes that we want to report on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say const start commit. And the best way to get the commit, what we want is we want the SHA of the current commit. So the best way to do this is we'll just say exec sync, because we want to run this as like an actual command on our shell and get the result from standard out. So we'll say exec sync, and the traditional way you do this is you say git reverse parse, and you'll give it the head commit. So that's just the current commit that we're on, so that when we start this script up, we'll say, okay, where are we at to begin with? And then we'll keep track of that through the life of this script while it's running, and we'll always just compare the commit whenever we want to check for committed number of lines changed. We'll git diff the start commit versus the current head, and at the beginning they'll be the same, but as you make commits and make changes, those will then differ. One thing to point out here is you do have to call toString on this, otherwise you're going to get a buffer. And then you're also going to want to call trim on the end of this, so that you can make sure and not include the new line that's going to get printed at the end of the output, which will mess up your later commands that you're going to run in the script. So we'll say add import from child process. That will work. All right. Let's also declare a variable called exited, or is exited. And so this is going to basically keep track of the state, because we're basically just going to run this script with a while loop and some sort of delay. And as long as they haven't requested to exit the script, we'll continue to run. So we'll say while is exited equals false. Excuse me. We are going to, let's just console.log this really quick. We're going to console.log git diff stats and write somewhere for now. We'll fill this in. And then we also need to wait. So let's just say we're going to wait, like, for the purpose of the demo, let's just wait a second. So we'll say await promise, or await new promise. And then we'll pass in, let's see, we pass in a function. That function is going to have the resolve function as its first argument. Yep, resolve function as its first argument. And then we will say set timeout, and we will pass in the resolve function as the callback, and we'll declare a timeout of 1 second, like that. Oh, we also need to spell correctly. There we go. All right, so now with this in place, let's go ahead and also let's print out the start commit. Console.log start commit. And let's go ahead and run this now to give it a quick test. So we'll say node dist index.js. And now every second, it should just keep printing. We won't always print the start commit, but it should always print the stats. All right, so now we need to actually get the stats. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to do this with a little bit of regex and a helper method, because we're going to have to do this twice. So we actually need the thing that we're trying to get to is we're trying to get to these statistics down here. So the thing we're trying to get to is we're trying to get to const total added, which will be some summation of commit added plus uncommitted added. And then we're going to have const total deleted, which is going to be commit deleted plus uncommitted deleted. Deleted. And then finally const total changed, which is going to be a summation of total added plus total deleted. Just like that. Of course, those variables don't exist, and we'll need to make them exist. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to first get the diff. So we'll say const committed diff. Okay, and this diff is again going to be a shell command that we run, and we're going to run a get diff with the short stat flag, and then we're also going to give it our start commit, because we want to compare the start commit against the current head, like this. So we'll say toString, which at the beginning, this will, like I said, this will be nothing. And then we also need to get the const uncommitted diff, which will be exsync. And this one's a little bit simpler. We just have to say get diff -- short stat, and we'll pass it the head. And then call toString. So now this is going to have our outputs on it. So let's go ahead and just comment these lines out real quick so we can run the script. And here we'll say console.log committed diff, and then console.log uncommitted diff. All right. So now, if we do node index.js and pass it the current repository, we should see, let's see, one file changed, which is correct, but we're getting a bunch of other output that we shouldn't be. Why are we getting that? Oh, we need to move these console logs from here to there. All right, now I'll try again. So now we see one file change, 32 insertions, one file change, 32 insertions, and there's a blank line because for the committed changes, there's currently not a diff. So let's go ahead and continue on here. So now what we need to do is we need to parse these outputs so that we can get them in the format that we want them, right? So we want to parse this so that we can get that total, and we can get the committed differences and the uncommitted differences. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're just going to define a new function down below here. We're going to call it function parse get diff output, like that. And this is just going to take the output, which is a string. And then, like I said, we're just going to do some regex on this. So we need to get the insertions and we need to get the deletions. And so to get the the insertions, we'll say const insertion match, and we'll say output dot match, and we'll just do a little bit of regex here. So we'll need a capture group, and we want to capture one or more digit, like this, and then we want to follow that by a space insertion or insertions insertion. And then for the deletion, we'll say const deletion match, which is going to be very similar, output dot match, In this case, we're again going to capture some digits, one or more digits, and this will be deletion. And we'll write that out. And then what we'll do is we'll say if there is a insertion match, we're going to reassign some variable. So we'll say if there's an insertion match, let's say let lines inserted equals 0 and let lines deleted equals 0. And then we'll say if there's an insertion match, we'll say lines inserted equals insertion match, and we want the captured group, which is at the first index. And this is complaining because it could be undefined. So we should probably check this, but in this case I'm not going to check it. I'm just going to assert it. This is probably not the right way to go about it, but in the sake for brevity, we'll say insertion match 1. But if you were really doing this correctly, you probably want to make sure that this isn't. Let's do it correctly, huh? Let's do it correctly. Let's say and. So there is a match and insertion match 1, right? So there is something there. Then we can properly access it. And we'll do the same thing for lines deleted. So we'll say, let me scroll up a little bit so you can see. We'll say deletion match and deletion match 1. Then we'll set lines deleted equal to parsing of the deletion matches first index value, and then we'll return this. So we'll say return lines inserted and lines deleted. Okay, so with that, we should be able to now go up here and we will say, whoops, instead of logging that, we will now make these variables that didn't exist now exist. So we'll say const, and we'll do a little destructuring here. So we'll say equals parse get diff output, and this is going to be the committed diff. So we will say commit added is going to be lines inserted, and commit deleted is going to be lines deleted. Will that work? Oh, I think it needs to be switched. So lines deleted becomes commit deleted, like that. And we need to flip these two. Lines inserted becomes commit added, just like that. And then we'll do the same thing for lines. Whoop, we'll say lines inserted is how did I name this? Uncommitted added, and lines deleted is uncommitted deleted. We'll say equals parse get diff output, and this time we'll pass in that diff, give it a little formatting. Okay, so now what we can do is we can actually print the output that we're after. So if we put that output back on the screen, if you don't remember, I'll put that output back on the screen. And so what we need to do is we need to say console. Let's actually put this in a variable. This will help us in a minute. We'll say const output equals total lines changed, and that's going to be equal to total changed. Then we're going to have a new line, and we're going to say committed, and we want to present this with some pluses and minuses. So this will be commit added, Then we'll have minus, and we'll say commit deleted. And then we'll do another new line. This is a little bit of a line of a long string, but we can live with it for now. So uncommitted, and we'll say this should be equal to plus uncommitted added, and then minus uncommit deleted. And then we'll print this console.log, our output. And now, if we rerun our script, we should see we have 57 lines added that haven't been committed. We have nothing committed that was committed while the script was running, right? From the time the script started running to the last iteration. So that's awesome, right? That's what we want, but we want that on our screen in OBS. We want that same information to be showing up over there. So what we need to do is we need to now write that out to a file. So that's pretty simple. Go ahead and hide that line counter just for a second here. And so what we'll say is we'll say await, write file, and we'll say output.txt, and then we'll just give it the output right there. And we'll go ahead and write that all out. And so now if we go back to PowerShell and we start this up again, we should see the output that we would expect, but now we also have an output.txt file that we can use in OBS. So the last thing we need to do to get this on screen is we'll put our line counter back on, but we will change the properties so that instead of reading whatever it was reading originally, it will now read what's being output by our line counter script here. If I can find it, let's see, line counter, output. And now you see it's showing the same thing that is going to the console, but now being printed to my screen in OBS because it's just pulling that file as I make changes. So let's go ahead and commit these changes, and we should see all those changes go to the committed group. So let's go git commit m demo video, and now we should see the committed changed. Oh, but we won't, because I've made a mistake in my, as with any live coding demo goes, all of this should also be being done within my while loop. So let's go ahead and format that, and let's try again now. So obviously, if we do this, we have 15 lines added, 16 lines removed, and that's in the uncommitted group now. But now if we go ahead and write that out and we do git add git commit m second times the charm, now we can see they moved to that committed category. And then it added 3 lines in the uncommitted category because, like I said, I'm writing to the output file. I'm writing the output file to my Git repo. So that's the changes it sees now. All right, so again, there's some holes in this script. There's obviously some more validation you could do, but I just wanted to kind of show a simple example of how you can go from having an idea, something fun you want to do with code, or something fun you want to do with something you're doing in your life, and your ability to code can allow you to actually make that a reality. So if you found this helpful or you found it motivating or inspiring, I'd love to hear from you. If you have a better approach for me to get this done, I'd love to hear from you as well. I'm learning like you guys are. So otherwise, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll talk to you in the next video. All right. Bye, y'all.